Come along as I get first light with my Celestron 9.25 EdgeHD as I look at the M51 Whirlpool Galaxy. So we're going to be using the Skywatcher 150i strain wave mount on the EQR tripod. This is a strain wave mount, can handle up to 55 pounds with the counterweights. I've got the saddle here. I'm going to use the USB to connect to a mini PC on my telescope, as well as the power adapter to power everything up. On the back panel, we've got a USB bridge cable. It's going to connect the mount to the mini PC, as well as a couple power inputs, one for the mount and one to power the saddle. All that's going to plug into a DC port here. So for adding the scope here, this is about 40 pounds fully loaded. I'll go through what's included on that in a moment. The Wave 150 can handle up to 55 pounds as long as you're using counterweights and balancing. I am using two counterweights right now. I'll probably add a third in the near future, but it's a little bit of a tricky process to get this mounted. I don't know that I would have been able to do this without the handle that I added on top, but a little bit of finagling to get it in place and try to do spin my knobs to get it attached, and I'll finally get it connected here in a moment. This is on the EQ6R tripod. I am using the EQ6 to Wave 150 adapter pier. So you can balance this by releasing the clutch. This is a nice feature on the 150i. Be very careful if you are doing this. This will allow you to do balancing of the scope itself. If you don't have proper weights on, you can definitely damage your equipment. This allows me to do a pretty precise balancing with those counterweights. So I don't anticipate doing this often. I know where the weights go now, but I can go ahead and tighten this back up. And you want to be very secure to make sure there's no movement there. Now that I've got everything balanced, I'm going to go ahead and get connected here. I've got a USB coming from my mini PC as well as a power adapter. Those are going to go right into the saddle. I'm using a custom power battery box that buddy Keith helped put together here. Go ahead and get that activated by plugging in the Anderson power pole connectors. And on the outside, I will be using a Anderson power pole to a 2.1 millimeter DC adapter that goes right into my power cord. So this is the completed setup. I'm using a ASI 2600 mono camera with a ZWO filter wheel, the Botter Steel Track focuser, ASCAR M54 OAG, and an ASI 174. I'm using some Lost Mandy dovetails. None of the wires move at all in this setup. The inside mount route wiring of the 150i is a real game changer. I do have this handle on top, really useful, and then I'm using a Pegasus power box with a Melee Overclock 4C mini PC and a mini router if I need extra reach to get my network. Got a dew strap as well as the aluminum dew shield as well. Now, I lost my video for getting my focus set up, but I was able to get the Botter focuser as well as the OAG set up in focus. Had to do a little bit of mirror movement to get the perfect focus, but once I got it all dialed in, we were good to go. I did check the collimation as well by taking it out of focus to see those donut shapes that you want to see in these EdgeHD SCTs. Collimation was looking really good right out of the box. So didn't have to mess with it this time, but I will be keeping an eye on it to see if that needs to change at all. But getting that focus in place as well as testing out the autofocuser, everything worked exactly as it needed to. The Botter Steel Track is a really nice, stable focusing unit. Now that we are in focus, we are going to do the electronic polar alignment. I'm using the 3-point polar alignment plugin inside of Nina. This takes 3 snapshots and basically tells me what direction I need to move the mount to get that polar alignment, left, right, up, or down. This is just a matter of looking back and forth at the screen and doing what it tells you to do. Once I've got it completely dialed in, then it's just a matter of putting it back in park, and then we are going to be ready to start our imaging run. It's time to find our target, and I have decided to do M51. I'm going to start with the Sky Atlas in Nina and search for M51, the Whirlpool Galaxy. Should fit nicely in my field of view. Once I've found it, I can add it here to the framing assistant. And that's going to allow me to see, okay, what will it look like in my frame? So I'm able to slew and center right to my target and make sure it fits perfectly, as well as go ahead and add this to the imaging sequencer inside of Nina. I use the legacy sequencer. You can do more advanced things inside of the advanced sequencer, but usually the legacy one works well for me. I'm able to set it up to automatically park, do the Meridian Flip, automatically focus when I want it to, start guiding when I start my sequence. And then I basically just set up imaging runs. I usually will try to make sure I have enough data to process every night. So I'll loop through targets here, starting with HA, then luminance, then red, then green, then blue, and just kind of looping my way through until the evening is done and morning hits. So guiding on the 150i with my EdgeHD, really successful. I've got a short video of it here at one point in the night. I pretty much stuck between 0.7 and 0.9 RMS, which is really good for me in my location. Really fantastic results, but really happy with what I saw without really doing any dialing in. And of course, new equipment, big scope. I did wake up in the middle of the night to kind of spot check how things were going, including checking out the Meridian Flip. So got my monitoring camera, taking a look at the setup here, and we can just watch it successfully flip and keep going. All right, it's morning time, successful night. We're going to go ahead and do our flat frames. I used the Flat Wizard in Nina, and I'll go ahead and activate the filters I used, Lume, Red, Green, Blue, and HA. Typically aim for 40% on each of these, and you can see my settings I have here. I'm going to go ahead and slew to zenith. That way I can come on out with my flat panel and rest it on top of the scope. And again, this light panel, really useful. Just kind of turn it on and we will set it right on top. Now we're ready, able to start the flat imaging process. So we'll basically just press start, and Nina is going to do all the hard work for me. It's going to find the correct exposure for each of my filters and work its way down until we find the perfect 40% of that histogram. You can see it here working its way backwards to find that perfect exposure, starting with Luminance. Here we go. So now we are ready to start imaging the flat for Luminance. We've found the right value I'm looking for, and then I'm going to capture 10 images for Luminance. I usually do 10 flats and 10 flat darks. And you can see some of those patterns and imperfections in the, I guess, dust in the camera, maybe some dust in my setup, but no worries, the flats are going to knock out any of that stuff in the images that I captured. We'll fast forward and zoom through all of the remaining flat filters. Really convenient. I can just kind of start the job, walk away, and let it go. Once we finish here, it's going to tell us, hey, we're ready for the put the cap on and do our dark flats. So I'm just going to take the light panel right off, turn that off, and I'm going to replace it with the, there we go, I'm going to replace it with the cover for my aluminum dew shield. That's going to allow me to take those dark frames. What's great, it's going to use the same settings that I had before, so we're just going to press OK, and it already knows exactly what exposure to loop through, and go ahead and grab all of those appropriate frames for me. Now we have a complete set of data for the evening. I'm going to go ahead and tear everything down. So I'm going to start by coming out. I've got everything turned off. Going to go ahead and unplug it from my battery box. I'm going to unconnect the USB and the power from the saddle. Those are the only two wires connecting my telescope to the mount. And then we're going to carefully disconnect it from the saddle. So again, this handle comes in handy, giving me something solid to hold on to while I get that disconnected. Again, you want to be very careful with your equipment, but go ahead and carry this back inside to store it. Next up, I'm going to take off the counterweights. So we'll unscrew the little toe saver at the bottom and pull those off. Again, each of these is about 11 pounds. I'm planning to add a third one to this setup to help move up that moment arm, I guess. But go ahead and get these inside. All right. Finally, we're going to take off that counterweight bar. It just threads out. And then with the 150i on the tripod and the pier, it is just a matter of picking it up and moving it back inside the house. So this is, as you'll see in a moment, significantly easier than it used to be with my EQ6R. It's a lot lighter, and I can just quite easily lift and right back to the garage. Now ready to start some processing. So we're going to start by stacking this using WBPP inside of Pixinsight. I don't really deviate from the standard settings here. So what I do is I start by loading up the directory that has the files in that I just captured. And they're organized by Nina, lights, darks, flats. I've got lights separated by filter, and then again my darks and flats from the process I had earlier. And Nina is going to recognize what kind of files those are, and it's going to go ahead and drop them into the right place, the right category. So I got everything lined up here. I am missing some darks, so I can add those in. I have my darks in a library. I took those probably a year ago, so I don't retake them every time. I need to add some of the 120-second captures. And then I also got some hydrogen alpha, so I need to add the 300-second capture as well. And once that is all in, I'm pretty much ready to go. I can look at the post calibration tab, and I usually will do a 2x drizzle when I'm processing. Whether or not I'm following all the rules here, don't really know, don't care, but I usually do this on my data no matter what. I'm gonna export that into a M51 folder, and we're gonna go ahead and start that process. We're going to step our way through. WPP is going to go ahead and do all of the integration and stacking process for me. It's going to help get rid of any problems that I've got, any maybe satellite trails and things like that. We'll just let it work its way through here. Once it's done, it's going to go ahead and auto crop and finalize all of those results. So I will have data that is ready to jump right in and get started with. There we go. All right, stacking is complete. All steps completed successfully. I'll also note all of my frames were successfully used, so nothing was rejected. And if I go to the folder, I'm going to be able to see here are the results. All of the stacking artifacts in here. The master is the one that I want. If I sort that by date modified, I'm going to see I have 5 2x drizzled images as well as 5 of the originals. All right, we're going to go ahead and open up those stacking results and see what it looks like. We'll navigate to the folder that it gave us the results, and I'm going to pick the 2x drizzle ones to work with. Go ahead and open those up. It's going to include the cropping mask here. I'm going to close those out of the way. I don't need those. And we'll just kind of take a look. We'll auto stretch and see what this data looks like. So that looks pretty darn good. I've got a weird little artifact there the flats did not take care of. I'll figure out what that is later. We'll look at each of our channels here. And this is some spectacular looking data. I'm really happy with this, especially for a full moon, basically, and inside of my neighborhood in a Bortle 7, almost 8. I'm gonna start with my Luminance, and I'll start with a DBE. I'll use that to help get rid of some of the gradient, especially from that moonlight. I'm going to remove a couple of these points right around the galaxy. And I think that's good enough. I'm going to save that because I'm going to redo this on each of the other frames, and after we apply it, we'll re-stretch this and see, and that looks a lot better. Our gradient is gone. I can keep doing this on the other frames as well. I just basically close this out and rerun it on each individual channel. And there we go. Kind of set the rest of those aside for now. We're going to work with Luminance to begin with. I usually start with Blur Exterminator. These are the settings I typically use on Galaxy. So I'm going to go ahead and drop that over here, let it process. Clears things up a good bit. All right. See some really good detail here. Next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to do star X, and I'm going to remove the stars. So I don't use the stars from my Luminance capture. So we will let this run. All right, we got the stars out of the way, and I'm gonna deal with that in a minute. Next thing I do is I do a noise exterminator. Use a 0.75 and 50 for the version 2. So I'm going to go ahead and let that run. I don't like to bring too much of the noise forward while I'm processing, so I knock a good bit of it out here at the beginning. And that is looking really nice to me. I don't like this. I'm going to figure out where that came from later, but I'm going to go ahead and knock this out using a clone stamp. I can get away with it right here because I'm kind of out in space. If that were on top of any of my signal, I might figure something else out, but I'm going to use the clone stamp here and just kind of knock this out. And that looks pretty good. Now I'm not going to have to worry about that. I'll figure out where it's coming from a little bit later. All right, so I'm going to go ahead. I've got a stretch on this. I'm going to remove that stretch. And I like to use Easy Stretch. There's GHS and other options, but Easy Stretch works really good for me, and it's nice and easy. I typically use these settings 0.15. And that gives me a nice kind of clean stretch. The data is still looking good. Maybe some of the core is a little blown out. I can get some of that back in a moment. But first I do a range selection. And this gets me a mask that I can use to help enhance some of the detail. And I don't want to worry about the deep space. I only want to worry about the actual image. So I'm going to go ahead and do that. I do this with screening. And now I've got that range mask. I'm going to add that to my image here. And I've got a couple of sharpening techniques that I've got saved here. I'll open them up and share what they are. I'm going to turn off the mask so you can see what it looks like. I usually hit it with 2 local histogram equalizations. I'm going to go ahead and run this first one. All right, there we go. And you can see that's starting to sharpen up the details. And then I've got another one here that I run at a different radius. I'm going to go ahead and run this too. And I've got these saved. I do these on pretty much all of my images. Sometimes I might change them around, but they've been pretty good on pretty much every image I process. All right, there we go, continuing to get sharper. One more that I'll do, I do this multilinear transform. I'll kind of share the settings I use here. Again, I don't mess with these. I found these online a long time ago, and they work really well for me, especially with my screening mask. I'm going to go ahead and apply that. And again, nice sharpness to the details. I find this works really well for me on galaxies and nebulas. I'll go ahead and remove that mask. I've got a little bit of noise left over here at the end. So I'm going to hit it one more time with Noise X. I'll use the version 3 on my final one here. We'll let this cook. All All right, there we go. All right, zoom in here, and again, it's looking really good. That noise kind of smoothed out. I like the details that I'm seeing here. So one of the things that I can do to try to get some of this detail back in the core, I'm going to go ahead and open up HDR multi-scale transform, and I can apply this to lightness and put a light mask on, and just go ahead and run that. And what we should see is we should get back some of that detail that is in that space that looks like it's blown out. And there, you can already see there's a good bit of that detail showing up in that space. I'm going to duplicate this, undo that on the original one. So I think I'm going to merge these together a little bit. I don't want to go too far. So what I can do is a little bit of pixel math, and I'm going to multiply my original luminance, take half of that, and multiply my clone and take half of that. That's going to give me a new image here. And that's going to combine a little bit of that detail. So now I've got more of that detail there. It's not as blown out as it was before. So I think I will use this as my new luminance. And you kind of see the difference between the two. A little bit more detail in my new one. Like that. So I'm going to rename this one. I'm not really going to need this anymore, but I'm going to rename my new one to Loom. That way I know which one is my primary one. All right, there we go, looking good. All right, I'm only going to record myself doing this with one of the color frames, but I do start with red, green, and blue. I've already adjusted the gradient, but I'm going to go ahead and pull those over into a combination. I'm going to rename this to 4 stars. So I'm going to process each channel individually, but I'm going to set aside a merged version of that because that's what I'm going to use for stars later. And then I'm going to use the blue frame here. If I go ahead and stretch that, you can see the detail there. And I like to start with, similar to Luminance, I start with a blur X. So I'm going to go ahead and rerun that same one that I ran earlier. There we go. And then I'm going to follow that up with a star X. Go ahead and get rid of the stars because, again, I'm going to use the ones from the other image. I don't care about these. Alright, stars are gone. And then I'm gonna hit it with a noise X. I'll do a little bit higher of a noise removal than I do on my main luminance. So we're gonna go ahead and let this run. Alright. That is looking good. All right, now that we've done that, I'm gonna go ahead. Nope, script. I'm gonna go and use easy soft stretch again. And again, I'll do this on every channel. This is going to put all three of my channels on a good balanced level. So I can process them individually, but they will all stretch to the same level with easy stretch. I'm going to go ahead and do the HDR multiscale transform here as well. And just ever so slightly, because I want the details in that color to pop out a little bit more. I'm going to run that, and then we'll see what that looks like here. There we go. So again, I've got more of that detail, and that color detail will pop out a little bit more once I add everything together. So we'll do this on all of the different channels. So we've got that done on each of the color frames. You can kind of see here the red, green, and blue, what those are looking like. We're going to take a look at the hydrogen alpha. And go ahead, and I'm going to start with a blur X on that as well. I'll do basically I'll do the same thing I did on the color side. So we'll let this run. There we go. Run the star X, knock that out, and then I'll do my noise X. All right. And my easy stretch. I'll take this up to the same level. And so now I've got my hydrogen alpha detail here. Go ahead and work on merging these together to get to our color image. And I'm going to start with an LRGB combination. I'm just going to add in my loom, red, green, and blue channel. And I'm going to adjust my saturation up a little bit here. We'll let this go ahead and combine and see what we're working with. Should be a good color image, but maybe a little dull. Let's see. There we go. All right, so I can see the color details there. I like how that is looking. What we're gonna do, I'm gonna do the mask again with screening. And this is gonna allow me to do a good targeted saturation boost. So let me add the mask. Now I'm going to do a curves adjustment. And I'll zoom in here to just focus on the galaxy, and I'm going to bump this saturation up. There we can see the good blue and red kind of differences popping out there. I like how that looks. I'm going to go ahead and apply it. Nope, don't want to run that again. That's too much. Zoom in one more time. And I might do just a slight curve here on the RGB. And I like how that is looking. So I'm going to go ahead and apply that. Take off my mask, and again, I like the detail that is showing here. Let's see. Got some options on how I might want to bring in that narrowband. There's a number of different ways. I'm going to do just a quick, easy one with the narrowband RGB combination script. Which image was it? Was it 20? Nope, 39. So I'm going to go to Script, Utilities, Narrowband, RGB combination. I'm going to add image 39, add hydrogen alpha. I'll bump down the intensity there to 1. And I will go ahead and apply that with this NB RGB button. And we'll let this, there we go. All right, so again, maybe a little severe, but you can see that's a way to add the narrowband into that color. I'm not sure I like it much better than the original. So what I might do is just go ahead and combine. There's a couple different things we can do here. I can add this narrow hydrogen alpha here, and maybe I'll just boost the saturation specifically on the narrowband areas, and that's going to give me a little bit more of that red pop. I think I actually like that better. So I'll do that. Okay, I'm gonna take off the mask, so I like how that's looking. And I've got a little green tint. I'm gonna do SCNR to get rid of some of that green. There we go. All right. I like that blue and red combo. I'm going to add the mask one more time. I'm going to disable show mask so I can see, and I'm going to do one more of this sharpening with the multilinear transform. There we go. Got a little more pop there in those dust lanes. All right, the last thing I think I'm going to do here, so I'm going to revisit the stars. So I've got a good color combination. I'm going to take a look at the stars here. So I can stretch that a little bit, see those details. I am going to start with a BlurX here. It's going to do a little bit of cleanup on the star shapes. They look really good to me anyways, but it does not hurt to go ahead and run this. All right, there we go. Next up, I'm going to do a script. I'm going to go to astrometry. I'm going to run the image solver. This will preload with the details from Nina. So I'm going to go ahead and run this. This is going to do basically a plate solve of my image. And once we have that, almost got it. There we go. Okay. Now with that, I can run the SPCC. This is the, what's it called? Spectrophotometric color calibration. I've got one set up here for the red, green, blue filters that I use, and this will just do a little correction of the color based on those filters. All right. So that finished up, and there we go. Got my color corrected here a little bit. I am going to kill the stretch. And I usually, for stars, I start with an arc sign stretch just to boost the color a little bit. I like how this turns out. So I'm going to turn this up so I can see a little bit of the detail. That looks good. And then I'm going to go back to my script. I'm going to do an easy stretch. Scripts. There we go, scripts. I'm going to use easy stretch again. And I'm going to boost this one up a little bit more. Again, there's a lot of different ways to do this, but this is how I like to do it. Okay, so now I have that in a stretched form. Now I can go into curves and I can do a couple things. I'm going to boost the saturation up here. All right, so I can see a lot more of the color in the stars when I do that. I'll do a little bit of an RGB stretch, and that is looking good to me. Okay, now I'm gonna run StarX one more time. This time I'm going to keep the stars. All right, that is done. I don't need that image anymore. Now I have one with just the stars. I'm gonna rename this to RGB stars. And I can do a little bit more curves here. If I want to boost the brightness a little bit, I can do that. So I'm gonna pull that up a little bit. I'm gonna add a little bit more saturation. And that looks good. I'll apply it. So now I have a good star image that I can add to my color image. I'm going to rename this one LRGB HA. So that's my final combination. Make sure there's no mask on it. So now I've got stars in a color image. I'm going to use pixel math, and I'm going to combine RGB stars and LRGB HA. Oh, not that one. And this should give me my final image there. So I am really happy with how this turned out. Again, for an almost full moon, this is first light on this Edge 9.25, and wow, I really like it. Thanks everybody for kind of joining me on my journey as I explore this new scope and take you from beginning to end, how I captured this and the processing that I did. Clear skies, everybody.